It just occurred to me that I didn't give you guys any updates on the knowledge management seminar that I attended. I think that was 2 weeks ago with the Box Office Incubator. Now, for those of you who are new to the podcast, Box Office Incubator is one of those tech hubs in Abuja that I've been spending some time spending some time around recently. And that's because the founder of the incubator, Doing, and I have some plans for 2022 where we're going to come up with material that is greatly needed for people in the entrepreneurial community. And that's because in the entrepreneurial community, at least in Abuja and Lagos anyway, people focus on all sorts of things that entrepreneurs and self-employed people need to succeed in business, including knowledge management, like the last program that we attended, risk management, raising funds, presentation, what else? Confidence. People talk about all things and everything under the sun that you need to succeed in business, except for the skill of selling, which, in my own opinion, is the most important and I guess is the most primordial skill that you need to succeed in business. Because if we're going to assume that money is the lifeblood of the business, then, in a way, your sales and your marketing ability has to be the very beating heart of the organization. And so, if we don't have blood flowing through the organization in the first place, then all these other things are going to come to naught. And so, so keep your eyes peeled for 2022 and some of the wonderful stuff that Doing of Box Office Incubator and I have planned for 2022. I'll keep you guys updated as we roll out the programs, the lectures, and whatever formats this thing are going to, that the series of lectures is going to take. Most likely is going to be hosted on their Instagram handle as well, and I'll try to get the video files so that I can have them on the Sales Conversation Instagram handle. That's where I post and write about stuff sales related, and also things that we talk about over here on the podcast. I'm not going to rip the audio sessions. I'm not going to read the audio from those sessions because those are going to be long sessions, maybe an hour or 2 hours, and that is beyond what we've allocated for the podcast, because I'm trying to keep things down to about 10, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes max, because we all have busy lives, and I make these podcast episodes excuse me, I make these recordings almost let's say 5 days a week. So I'd like to keep your time commitment down to a minimum. Yeah, let me put it that way. Okay, so that's one about Box Office Hub. So the last session that I attended with them, I just went through because I like to see the other speakers that are there in the ecosystem and also find out what they're about. Excuse me, find out what they're about so that I can, when I start talking about sales with them, I can align my. So excuse me, still haven't fully recovered from the cold yet. So that when I start talking with them, I can align the sales message to things that previous guests have already spoken about, and keep things within the same vein, within the same business philosophy. So on the session on knowledge management, I didn't catch that from the beginning. The person who spoke there is also one of us. I think his name is Sheon also. He's the lead photographer of Cognito Studios. So I don't know if they've left the wedding space, because there was a time that they were quite big in the wedding space here in Abuja, or at least they were gaining some traction. But I've noticed that they seem to be involved in other stuff, much more corporate type activities. Well, let me just assume they're still involved in the wedding industry. So he is one of us, and he spoke about knowledge management. I was surprised to find out that he has a medical background. So I'm beginning to wonder, is there anybody in the event industry, at least in Abuja anyway, who has a proper event industry background, at least from an academic point of view? Because I know that there's some university in Ireland that offers a course on event management, and one of the more older event professionals that I met when I first came to Abuja, I know she studied that course. And I have another friend, that's Omotala of Korban Events, who is currently, this is November, so she's currently off in Ireland, I think, doing the same course. So, apart from both of them who have professional, rather academic backgrounds in it, I'm beginning to wonder if there's anybody else or the rest of us just happen to come in from other professions. So, anyway, I'm sure that before I came, he spoke about the importance of knowledge management. I'll get those details later so I can share on the podcast. And so, at the point that I caught the presentation, he was talking about coming up with a knowledge map. That is important to map out all the things that you know and your deficits, all the things that you think you will need to know to take you where it is that you are heading. So, obviously, on this podcast, since we talk a lot about sales and personal selling, sales and personal selling, and how to grow our bottom line, I guess our knowledge map and the deficits will probably revolve around those sorts of things. This is what I know about selling. I assume selling is going to help me achieve these goals by growing by X percentage or X amounts, and these are the deficits, these are the things that I need to know. He also spoke about different kinds of knowledge. That knowledge can be explicit or it can be tacit. The explicit knowledge, of course, is all the knowledge that we bring in our noggin, the one that everybody has because it's your course of study or it's your preferred, avenue of interest. Like me, I'm interested in sales, although I'm not an MBA. Okay, well, I do have a diploma in business management. So, so I guess that counts. So, explicit knowledge basically is all that knowledge that we have explicitly acquired and we know that it is locked up in our brains. And then there is the tacit knowledge, which is all that knowledge that we get from because it's relational or it's environmental. For instance, things that I may have picked up from my parents, because my mom is a retired public relations executive and my father was in journalism. He was a journalist with the NTA, and then later on he moved into, I guess, what you would call government propaganda, if you can put it that way. He was with the National Orientation Agency, part of a spin-off of the Ministry of Information, I think. Well, at least back in those days when we were kids anyway, it was sort of like a spin-off. So since I'm the child of former communications professionals, so there may have been some things that I picked up because of conversations, in the living room that they must have been having, or maybe in the car, or things that they were working on. So we do have that information that we pick up as well. Or like, for instance, those of you who are listeners to the podcast, and because you've been hanging out with me for the last year, you now kind of tacitly pick up some information as well. So, so basically, he just wanted to let us know that we should be aware that not all knowledge is explicit. We pick up some things tacitly as well. And the final recommendation for the day basically was to package your learning into a shareable format. You should codify your learning, put it in writing, and then share. The main reason why you should share with your employees, obviously, is so that it'll be able to grow your business, and that is something I've spoken about on the podcast. How sales is a learnable process, is question driven, and it involves simple frameworks, and that we ought to learn these frameworks, put them in writing, and then leave them behind for our employees. Because if we don't do that, each time they go out to sell, or each time they're interacting with potential customers, they'll be trying to freestyle, and freestyling does not give you it doesn't give you guaranteed, consistent, repeatable results over the long term. So if you give them a format, you bring them up to speed, let them in on this is the philosophy and this is how you do it, then you put yourself, you increase your odds, and then you increase their batting average, and you're going to be able to track progress. And if things are not working out, you know where to tweak it and how to move things along. So that's why you should codify your knowledge and then share with your employees. And so obviously people do that, at least in Nigeria anyway. The whole thing around SOPs, standard operating procedures. Most management consultants that you run into in Abuja, or people who talk about stuff like that, sorry, not Abuja, Nigeria, or people who talk about things like that over on Instagram, is one of the things that they will talk about. You need to have a standard operating procedure so that everybody knows how things are done. People in the accounts department need to know this is how things are done. People in sales need to know this is how things are done. People in marketing need to know this is how things are done. And people in corporate affairs or PR or whatever You also need to know that this is how we run things within the organization. And then he added a really interesting perspective, and that is that when you have done all these things and you've codified the knowledge that you have, you should also share it externally so that you will increase your thought leadership. So that is something that wedding photographers already do quite well, because there are lots of wedding photographers, Lagos, Abuja. There's this cat in Port Harcourt, I can't remember his name right now, but they put out lots of videos. This is how you shoot, this is how you make a book, this is how you compose, this is how you frame, this is how you do high frequency retouching, all kinds of things. And so, wedding photographers, particularly, are very good at establishing thought leadership and credibility when it comes to these sorts of things, because they not only learn stuff, but they package it, they codify it, and then they put it out there in the world, whether it's on YouTube or Medium, like I am doing. I do all my writing on sales on Medium and Instagram, although I'm thinking of putting up a blog on Google as well, just so I can get some Google juice, some SEO benefits, because I'm not sure if Google takes into account stuff that is published on Medium and all those other kinds of sites, Medium, Twitter, and on and on. Yeah, so that's something that the rest of you guys ought to try and do as well, because wedding photographers do this routinely, they do this well. So the rest of you cake artists, you all should get into the action as well. Associate that I've spoken about on the podcast time and time again. What's her name? I can't remember. Boy. Anyway, it'll come back to me, hopefully. She has set up an Instagram handle. She just got married recently, and she got married to a videographer. And since then, the quality of her content game has really stepped up. Photographs on point, YouTube videos on point. So she's putting out lots of stuff. And if they're able to maintain this consistently, that's posting weekly like they do, they should be able to build up thought leadership in that regard. Apart from it being nice, useful learning resources for her fans and people who might want to work with her in the future. So yes, that's an added benefit. And all of these things that we've spoken about now fall into the interesting purview of knowledge management. So, like I said, it's one of the things that is important in trying to build a business. Risk management that we spoke about before, knowledge management that we're talking about now. But I still maintain that, of course, Naira and Kobo, dollars and pounds and yen and lira, that is pretty much the lifeblood of whatever it is that we do. Oh yeah, and ruble. Let's not leave out the Russians. At least I think the Russian currency is the ruble. If I'm wrong, please, gentle listener, shoot me an email, shoot me a message, and let me know. So that's it. Currency basically is behind what it is that we do, and so we ought to make sure that at the foundation of everything, we need to take selling and personal sales seriously. And it's only when we get some traction going that we can start worrying about all this other fancy stuff. But when you do start experimenting with knowledge management and trying to learn some more about that, these are some of the things that you have to put your mind to when you're trying to put your house in order, at least as far as knowledge management, getting your SOPs, and trying to establish some thought leadership. So thank you very much for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based business consultant, Tabishima Ayede. Thank you very much for your time. I will catch you guys at the next recording.